AVST Live webinar. Today we're talking about boosting call completion. This is Ann Rood with AVST Marketing. Neil Butler, our Director of Sales Engineering, will be presenting today. But before Neil gets us going with the slides, I want to let you know a couple of quick things. First of all, you may download the slides if you're interested. They are in the handouts area. If you have the other small screen minimized, you can use the orange arrow in the upper corner. And that's also where you'll find the question box. If you'd like to submit a question anytime during the webinar, you're welcome to do that. And then we'll, of course, let you know when it's time for the Q&A at the end. And then lastly, we are recording. So if you miss this or you have a coworker that couldn't join and you'd like to review or make that available to them, look for an email from us later today with the recording, and we'll also include another link to the slides at that time. So with that, I'll have Neil get us started.
Thank you, Ann. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for showing up. This one's kind of an interesting one to do. When we first started doing these, we had people sort of say, well, you know, what do you really have to do with call completion? You're a voicemail system. Nothing gets us going quite like somebody saying we're just a voicemail system. While we certainly are recognized as, you know, one of the leading voicemail systems in the market today, we do a lot more. And we do a lot more because we discovered early on that while taking a message and doing it well is a great and noble thing to do, it is much better to complete that call the first time it comes in. Call completion numbers vary. Somebody does a survey every year, and the numbers are really interesting. And the last time I saw them, it was something like 26% of calls that ring into an enterprise get connected to the right person the first time. And the rest become messages, and hopefully. And that's just not a good number. There's nothing wrong with systems out there. It's a very complex thing to complete calls today. And we've got the kind of background where we understand that. And we have that background partially from simply longevity. We've been doing this for a long time. And 1982, when we were founded, we were primarily just taking messages, and we were happy to do that. But as things developed and changed, you know, kind of the more active part of the application platform started to get developed. So we would take messages, or we would do IVR, so we could do data dips and read information to callers. We'd make outgoing calls to pagers for notification. We would transfer out to cell phones, not just desks. I mean, we continually focused in on business communications and what we could add for the users. And in the end, we basically ended up with a platform that, while it certainly takes messages, it does a lot more. And if you look at kind of our approach to things over the years, you know, we always tell people that, you know, we like to be able to say that our solution will work anywhere. You can go into any building and, you know, knock on a door and talk about what we do, and not have an accompanying list of all the pieces of equipment that have to be ripped out or updated. We interoperate not only with phone systems, but with network architectures and groupware packages, etc. And we do this at a enterprise level. And part of the reason I think that we do so well, particularly compared to our competition, is we started this platform in 1982, and we were lucky that we started with a system that was built on open software, which means we haven't had to start over again, and all of our competition has started over, some of them 2 or 3 times in the same amount of time that we've been building this product. So it's a rock-solid product, and we don't have to worry every release or every couple of years when a new system has to be built about starting all over to get it reliable. Instead, we can focus on features. And a large part of the focus on features for us in the last few years has been mobility, which has led into our interest in call completion. Our platform is unique in that it's kind of a 3-tier architecture, like a data product more than a voice product. We have this core engine we've been working on forever, and underneath it we have all the connectors that we reach out and connect with everything in the enterprise. And then on top you add the various modules for functionality. We're very proud of the fact that you can buy us as just a voicemail, or you can buy us as just a speech automated attendant, or you can buy us and load us up with every feature in the world to support local users and users in informal work groups and mobile users. All of that functionality is there. What we're going to talk about today is, I don't want to say totally focused on mobile users, because there are things that go beyond that. Although I think everybody understands call completion gets harder when you let the employees leave their desk. It'd be very easy to complete calls if we knew where they were, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So call completion is something that you really need to step back and decide very early on in the product design, how are you going to do this? And we've had enough time to go through and do this a number of different ways. We're pretty comfortable with our approach. I like this slide because we're actually kind of lying a little bit here in the sense of that tagline, work is an activity, not a location, is from the late 80s, early 90s from us, but it actually referred to unified messaging early on. Because one of the problems with mobile employees early on was they didn't know when they had messages. So unified messaging was a tool that would really let them work anywhere. But that tagline has stuck with us because it's very true, and it's more true now than ever. If you think about where you work from, it's not just at your desk anymore. I'm sure there are some people who sit at a desk and work 5 days a week, 8 to 5, kind of a normal picture-perfect job. But I'm guessing none of the people on this webinar fit that. If nothing else, most of us spend a good deal of time out of our desks and somewhere in meetings. And a lot of us travel. Some of us work from home several days a week. The truth is, what you need to do is arm yourself with the tools to be effective wherever you are. And that's a lot of tools, and they don't just come from us, obviously, but from what we're going to focus on today, from the call activity, that's something that we're going to focus on. So if you look at devices, we had a software release came out about 8 years ago, and I was looking at an early version of it, and I had to go talk to engineering because I said, I don't see where you put any users' telephone numbers. And they said, they don't have telephone numbers anymore, they have devices. And I thought that was just kind of a little ridiculous. And they just smiled tolerantly at me, which they do quite a bit. And as we've grown this product over the years, it makes perfect sense now to call them devices. Because devices not only includes telephones, but includes things like your tablets and your PC and your pagers in some cases. There's all sorts of things linked to a mailbox that have a telephony component, and more people have multiple ones. Now, I have an unusual setup because I have to test all this. So I have 4 mobile phones, 2 mobile tablets, 3 telephones within the building, plus a home office, and then 2 Skype clients that I use for testing. So my device list is probably the most full in our system. And that is not what people have, and they shouldn't have, and it'd be very hard to support a user that complex. But typically, when we look at users, they're going to have, a desk telephone. Now, in today's world, desk telephone, that picture might not be appropriate because that could be a desktop Skype client. That could be a soft phone from their PBX. But we're going to talk about kind of the main business phone as the desk phone. And then almost everybody has a mobile phone. I would say everybody has a mobile phone, but not everybody uses their mobile phone for business. Some people have a personal mobile phone, and those 8 to 5 people, they're not so big on using that within the business. But for the bulk of us who move around as part of our job, we also have a mobile phone. And then we probably have something besides just the phone on our mobile device. And I'm showing a Skype for Business client here, but it could be a soft phone from my PBX here as well. And then even more and more, people have tablets. And tablets as a business tool, they're pretty well integrated into the environment. And in most cases, and I know at least in mine, that tablet not only has business communication software on it, it can have a phone on it. A soft phone on a tablet is a pretty popular thing. So I have all these devices, and I have calls coming in for users, and how in the world am I going to get those calls to those people? Now, some of our competition we find quite amusing because what they say is, let's just ring them all at once. Let's just ring everything the user has, and then when they answer it, the rest of them will stop ringing eventually. And a couple of issues we find with that. One is it takes a lot of extra trunks that you have to buy and equip the system with. Even though only one is going to actually answer it, you have to have, in this case, 3 extra trunks besides the one to even ring those other devices. And if you don't have them, then you're not getting any functionality. So there's an issue there. Secondly, right now, sitting at my desk, I have 2 mobile phones turned on. One also has a Skype client on it. I have one soft phone and one regular desk phone. So if I had that methodology, what would happen is all of those would ring at once. And that's, that's really not what anybody wants. So that logic didn't make sense to us. Early on, and I'm talking maybe 12 years ago, we set up software where the user could easily switch their device. The concept was it rings at my desk during the normal business day. When I leave, I go in and I change it to ring on my mobile phone. When I get home, I change it to ring on my home phone. And so I could really control, call completion. But people don't want to do that. Users don't want to be involved. It's got to be much more simple than that. And the problem is a simple solution for a complex problem is not something that really presents itself, with an aha moment to everybody. And we've had our aha moment, although it's taken us a few years. And what we discovered was context. So we have what we call intelligent call routing. Intelligence that we're relying on there is not the user's intelligence of the application. And what we've discovered is there's a lot of really good information within an enterprise that can be used to make good call routing decisions. And so we have this, marketing came up with this, the context wheel, which is just a great way of looking at this. And we're going to look at how we use information in these various categories to handle calls more efficiently. Now, the first one is really something that, I find kind of amazing when I compare it to our competitors. We have a schedule. So if you call into the automated attendant and ask for somebody or dial their extension, we may or may not transfer that call to them at all based on the schedule. Or we may transfer it to different places. So a simple thing like, so I support the East Coast quite a bit. I support EMEA and PAC RIM, so I have very unusual hours. But I still want to schedule. I'm one of those guys who has my mobile phone with me all the time. And if I deal with people, from the UK, they will always feel free to pick up the phone and call me because they think, well, I know, for him it's 3 in the morning, but, I want to leave a message for him. But it's, being 3 in the morning doesn't help if the phone's next to the bed and it rings. So from a protection point of view, it's easy to set this up. My phone, calls coming through our system, they'll be sent to my mobile phone starting at 6 a.m. in the morning, which is the time I'm typically out the door for my commute, up to 7 p.m. And other than that, it won't go there. It'll go straight to voicemail. As simple as a schedule. Now, that same schedule can be set up so that on Saturdays and Sundays, it's different. Or maybe I work a half day at home, and I can say, so from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., send it to my mobile phone during work days. From 8 a.m. on to 7 a.m. on to 5 p.m., send it to my desk phone, and then after that, send it to my mobile phone up to when the schedule goes off. I can increase call completion with something as simple as a schedule. Typically, the administrator sets the schedules up, but the users can easily view and maintain those schedules. That little screenshot you see there is Web Phone Manager, and that's the user looking at one of their schedules to see what's going on. So that's kind of a very simple starting point. But it gets a little more interesting as we start looking deeper, and the next one we look at is the calendar. Probably the most requested call routing feature in the last 10 years in our industry is, couldn't you play a different greeting and tell people I'm in a meeting? And we started looking at that about 10 years ago, and actually it was longer than that. It was about 13 years ago, and started down that road and thought, well, wait, we can do that, but there's a lot of other things we can do as well. And those other things will help us handle this call routing. But certainly the ability to tell the caller he's in a meeting and tell them when he's getting out of that meeting and then send them to voicemail is a much more powerful tool than just ringing his desk until he doesn't answer and then playing the generic greeting. And we'll look at how we can generate these greetings to give the caller even more information. So the calendar is one of our context routing points, a very popular one, and obviously the more you're in meetings and things, the more value you'll find in it. We can also do that same thing with the Skype or Link Presence Engine. Now, I'm always amused that they call that presence. That's kind of a happy face, sad face presence engine. I am at my desk or not. It doesn't know where I am. It just knows if I'm right here. We can actually do better than that. We'll see that in a second. But even the presence engine, I can know that the user is in the building, but they haven't touched their mouse or keyboard in an hour, so they're probably away from their desk. And I can make call routing decisions based on that. Or as a user, if I go into IM and put myself in Do Not Disturb, I can set it up so that CX will automatically send calls to voicemail. So that's another powerful tool. Now, what's good about these tools, if you look at the ones we have here, daily schedule, calendar, IM presence, the user doesn't have to do anything different than they're already doing. They don't have to do anything special in the calendar. I'm assuming they're using their calendar and putting their appointments in there. That's almost a religious right in the business world. IM's automatically knowing about their status. So we've now started routing calls intelligently based on what's going on with that user and not involving them. That's really the important step. Now, the one that we bring to the market that probably adds the biggest chunk of value for mobile people is locations. Now, we try very carefully not to say CX knows where you are, because that's not true, and it really worries a lot of people, which is sort of interesting. But what it does let is a user build a location that can be used in call routing. So as a user, I can go into my mobile client, so I have the mobile client on my device now, and I can say, map this location I'm at now and call it at work. We'll see how that works in a second. And now I can have rules that say things like, if this person, call comes in for this person, let me see if he's at work. And I ping the phone and say, are you in this location? And the phone sends back, no. Well, then why am I going to ring the desk phone? I'll move on to the next rule in the list. I can do this same thing for a home office number. If all I built were two locations, home and work, I would now have three locations, home, work, and other. So when I'm at home, send it to my business phone at home. When I'm at work, send it to my desk phone. Other, when I'm anywhere else, send it to my mobile phone. We start seeing kind of the power of the decision process for routing calls to the user's different devices based on information that's already there. User doesn't have to do anything on a day-by-day basis. So if you look at kind of how this works, what we integrate with and then what we're doing, we're using information that the user is already diligent about using, and we're going to do some extra things on top of it. So if you look at the calendar first, you notice that greeting is not something that Robert Johnson recorded. That greeting is automatically generated. And in this case, a call comes in, and it says, my regular rule says send it to my desk. But let me check, what else do I have? Well, I have an automatic override set for when I'm in a meeting. And sure enough, I'm in a meeting, so the system will generate Robert Johnson is currently in a meeting and will be back at 11. And the user may or may not have the return time. That's kind of a personal choice. But the caller now got much better information, much better callback expectation. They know that if they can't wait that long to go on to another person. So that's just a very powerful tool to use. And on the other side of the screen, the instant messaging, same kind of thing. We don't just know whether whether you're away or not. We're not just monitoring that. We're using every status that's in the client. So if a user goes up to do not disturb or busy, they can have rules that tell how they want to have that client set. So I can have a rule that says, if I'm in the building, and I know that because of my mobile location, but I am not at my desk, and I know that because of my Skype client, then send my calls to my mobile phone because I know I carry it around when I wander through the building. So all these rules are set up in advance, and the user doesn't do anything, and the system's completely automatic. And also great information to the caller. Just not, please leave me a message at the tone, or he's not available. This gets really good information for the caller. So if we look at availability, we start with this. Caller calls into our system. Now, this also could be triggered with DIDs. Typically, we talk about an automated attendant, but let's say somebody calls a DID instead, rings at the DID 5 times and goes into the system. That's fine. I can actually have a rule that says when calls come in, send it first to the desk and then to my mobile phone. But with a call forwarded in from a DID call, I know that, and I'll simply skip sending it to the desk because I know that's where it came from. So this is kind of the basic setup. Now let's see what we can add to this to kind of explain how this works. So this is a way too complicated screen because we can do so much, and I hesitate when I show this because sometimes people look at that and then they shy away because it looks complex. It is very feature rich, but most people, this is that typical 80-20 thing we see everywhere, most people won't use all this. But let's look at what is in here. The first thing is find me devices, a device list or a phone number list. And now you can have a list of how I'd like the system to call me when this particular availability state is on. So this particular one we're looking at here is mobile, and we'll see about the rules that make it mobile in a second. But of course, the thing to do is send it to my mobile phone if I'm mobile. Now in my case, because I test a lot of things, you can see if I don't answer on my mobile, send it to my link client as a phone call, or the iPad on my soft phone on my iPad, or send it to my personal mobile. I can have up to 99 numbers in this list, but I guarantee you no human being is going to wait while we try 99 different extensions. But it's very, very flexible. Typically, there's 1 or 2 numbers in a list, kind of based on what the circumstances for that list are. Now, once I send it out to the user, if I'm not successful, we're good at call completion, but we're not going to hit 100%. I now can program for this availability list, what do I want to tell the user? If I don't choose anything, it'll just play my greeting, and some people want that. But I also have other things I can do, like I'm away from the building, I'm in the office but away from the phone if I'm using my presence awareness as well. So this is kind of how you instruct the system to bring together the pieces to build a greeting on the fly. And you can add things to this as well. These are the default ones that come with the system. And then what do I want to do after I tell the user that? Now, typically take a message is obviously what we're going to have turned on, but I can do other things. If this is some like a hot desk coverage number, and it goes through and we tell the user, you're sorry, there's no one there to answer your call, maybe we don't want to take a message. Maybe we want to route it to another user or to an operator, or we just want to hang up. Maybe the message is such that, if they didn't get me, they just have to call back later. So we have very powerful tools from when we answer that call to when the user actually hangs up from that call. All that can be programmed. Now, what I tell people when I talk to prospective customers is the way to use this technology in the beginning specifically is keep it simple. So if we look at an average user's day, they spend some time at their desk, they spend some time in meetings, and they spend some time away from their desk or mobile. And if we can handle those 3 circumstances effectively, we will have done an incredible job at increasing call completion. So let's look at how we're going to do that. So at my desk would probably be first a schedule, right? A schedule that says from whatever my business hours are, 8 to 5, first thing to do is go to my schedule, and my schedule says ring my desk or my primary number. If I don't answer, ring my mobile phone. And then there's various options for that. If I don't answer, I can have my system build a greeting on the fly. Neil Butler does not answer. Please leave a message. Try another person or operator. I can use the location service along with it, so I won't bother ringing that desk phone. I'll go on to the next step automatically if I'm not in the building. So this is just a nice, easy thing, and this fits almost every business user, right? Almost every business user has a primary device or a desk phone and a mobile phone, and they're in and out of the office. So if this was all you did with it, I think you'd be getting your money's worth. Now a call comes in and it says, he's not in the office. We ask, we pinged, is he in the office? No. Is he at home? No. So we want to go into True Mobile. So now I'm going to go into mobile, and I'm going to go ahead and build a greeting on the fly again. In this case, I'm just choosing the simple one. Neil Butler's out of the office. Please say leave a message, try another person or operator. And I have no second device here. I could, but typically, even those of us that carry 2 mobile phones probably don't expect a call to ring one and then to ring the other. If I couldn't answer the first one, I guess you could have a backup phone, so if you're on the first one, you can answer a second one. Maybe commissioned salespeople want to make sure they get those calls. It's that important to them. So this is just another way, another list that we can do that with. Now, the whole piece about being mobile and about being in a meeting brings up another feature we have that's unique that people really like. Now, you notice here for mobile, I have this feature turned on. Allow call alert notification to mobile clients. Well, I'm not going to use that when somebody's just out in mobile, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But I will now talk about why you would want to use that. So when I'm in a meeting, most people would probably think, oh, and then you send your voice messages, to voicemail, because you can't answer your phone and find out who it is. You can't even tell, how important it is. Now, most of us are more than happy to triage email, because the visibility element, the quiet visibility, means I can keep an eye on that and say, ooh, there's that important message. I have to step out and handle that. But we're not really able to do that on a phone. But with our client, now you can do it on a phone. So you turn on that allow call alert, and now what happens when somebody calls and asks for you, and it says, oh, he's in a meeting, I'm supposed to send it to his company mobile. His company mobile has the AVST client on it. Therefore, I can give him a pop-up, a silent pop-up on that phone that shows him who's calling. So now in my case, I look down on my phone, I see that it's Mike. Maybe I'm working an important deal with Mike and I hit accept and step out into the hallway and the system transfers the phone call to me. Or maybe I hit reject and send it straight to voicemail because I know what Mike wants is not that important. Or I might choose to play an announcement, an acknowledgement message. So I could record one, I can hit a button and say, yeah, listen, Mike, I'm just going into a meeting. I'm going to be about a half hour. I'll call you when I get out. And Mike would hear, Neil Butler was unable to take your call, but left you this message. And it would play that message real time. But I didn't commit to the call. Or if I'm right in the middle of the meeting, I might hit the select acknowledgement button, and the screen would come up, and there's pre-canned announcements on there. And I could hit one of them, and Mike would hear, Neil Butler was unable to take your call, but we'll call you back in 2 hours, or whatever I selected from that menu. So having that alert and that pop-up gives us a truly unique ability, which is screening incoming calls and doing that triage we do already for email, but doing it for calls as well. So now call completion becomes kind of a who's calling me thing, not just calls in general. I can make decisions based on the identity of the caller. So if I sort of stack all this up, we talk with a schedule, and the schedule is going to send it to one of those lists that we looked at. This you can see, it's mobile for my commute time, at my desk during the bulk of the day, and then working from home on one particular night. So I can have a very flexible schedule. And notice this is the user client where they can view and control this. Now I have this all set up, and everything should be perfect, in our worlds, but of course it's not. So what's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how to override that schedule. And I'm going to do it in one of two ways. We're going to talk about automatic overrides, which is something we've already been talking about, actually. And then I'm going to look at manual overrides. Automatic overrides are those things we talk about, like your presence engine, your physical location, your calendar. So a call comes in and it says, normally I would ring the desk, but let's see if there's an override. Oh, there is. The person's in a meeting, or they're not at that location, or their presence engine says they're away from the desk. So that's what I'm doing. I have my schedule as a starting point, and then I implement automatic overrides. And the automatic overrides are the context wheel that we talked about, where we can track all of these things and change what the schedule says based on the presence of those indicators from the context wheel. And we looked at the calendar piece, and we looked at the I am present piece, and we looked at the physical location piece. But now let's take a look at that physical location piece a little closer. So you can see the user's gone in, they're set up for mobile, they have that physical location. The one area where the users do have to get involved is they have to define the usable locations on their device. Now this is important for two reasons. One, the way to get this work accurately is actually run this little app you're looking at here when you're in that location. This is a screenshot from my iPhone running. I'm building the location for my office. I went in and I said, find my location. It brings me up this little map. Now what it's doing is it's triangulating out to the cell towers. And it's basically using 3 cell towers to figure out, okay, and it shows me this little button. Is this where you are? It gives me the address and everything. I hit on that, and that is now my location I've defined. And that location can now be used in rules for routing my call. And then in my case, I go and I do another one at home, and now I have everything I need to effectively handle and manage my calls. But you notice I'm building individual locations. This isn't a ping his phone and find out where he is. This is my records show he has built a location for work. Could you tell me if he's there or not? So there's no report at the end of the day that shows where the users have been or anything along those lines. And it's interesting because half the people are worried there is and half the people are disappointed there isn't. But that's not what we do. The second thing that's important is how we're doing this. There's some other competitive products that do something like this, but their app continually does this. It pings over and over and over and over again, and it keeps the current location in memory on the phone. And even their own documentation will tell you that's going to drain your battery fairly quickly. And their application has to be running at all times, or this doesn't work. If they close the app out and the call comes in for them, it'll ask, it'll reach out and ask for that location. The app's not running, it won't get it. That's not what we do. Our app does not have to be running. When we send something to that phone, we send a wake-up call. We send it to the phone and say, wake up our app and tell me whether or not this person is at this location. So there's literally no impact on the battery at all. So a much better way to use it if it's something that you want to have running. Now the automatic overrides are kind of interesting. You can do them when you're at your desk. You can put them in yourself. Or excuse me, the automatic overrides will kind of affect the things at your desk. They'll affect your mobile clients. And by the time we're done setting up the system, you should get, probably 90% of your calls at least sent to the device that's appropriate based on where you are and what you're doing. That's the goal. Things don't always go well, though, so what we're also going to have to do is let the user override everything, right? And it's real easy to think of examples of this. I was going to work today, but I have a really bad cold. I'm going to work the second half of the day or the whole day at home. My schedule says send everything to my desk. So I don't want that. I want to go in and override that and say send everything to my home. Or something as simple as I had a 3-hour meeting. It got over in an hour. Now I'm back at my desk, but we're still reading the calendar. We think you're in the meeting. I want to override that. I want to bring it back. So we have a number of ways where a user can override the schedule. The simplest one, if you have the speech interface, is just call in and tell it what you want. Change availability to mobile. Change availability to desk. Whatever you want, you can just do that. And then our web phone manager client and our mobile client let you do it as well, and we'll look at those in a second. When you put a manual override in, the schedule has no effect. Automatic overrides have no effect. This is total pure user control. And I think that's important to keep in mind, and that's also why we have some tools to help the administrators when somebody calls and says, it's not working anymore, we can go in and say, oh yeah, I see you put it on automatic override yesterday and forgot to take it off. You can actually create automatic overrides with a time limit too. So change availability to home for 4 hours so that then it would go back to the regular schedule. The manual overrides can be set from web phone manager. You can see there's a nice thing. I can just hit that availability drop down, pick what I want. Say it never expires, or go down there and say make it for 1 day or 5 hours, or expires at 5 p.m., whatever I want to do. And then I can do the same thing from the mobile client, and that's just a little spinning wheel where I pick the availability state that I want and set the same kind of settings. So very, very easy for the user to override as well. So we have something so simple the user doesn't have to do anything at all, but we still give them the ability to fix things if they need to. Now, there's quite a few special features in here besides just the routing. We've looked at some of these. This one we looked at. Now, this one's interesting. This is the, when I'm in a meeting, announce my calls with a silent pop-up. That's just a great feature, and it's a very unique feature in our system. Now, the question is, do I always want that turned on? So maybe I have, when I'm mobile and I'm not in a meeting, maybe I don't want to have that pop-up. So think of yourself in the car, and you're driving down the road and your phone rings and you feel your pocket vibrate. You have to get your phone out and see that screen and say, oh yeah, let me take that call. That's not a safe way to do it. So the system is smart enough for different availability states based on where you're located to not use that. So if I don't use it, I still get all the benefits. When I answer it, it says, you have a call from John Tyler. Please say accept call, reject call, acknowledge, transfer call, or review. So I still get all the ability to do the screening, but now it's hands-free, eyes-free, so it's a much safer environment to do it in. We used to play the number of personal greetings game. We have 3. The user, our competition would have 5. We'd make it so we had 7, and we finally just figured we'd end that particular war. You can have as many greetings as you want. The administrator can create greeting categories. Now these are all kind of named for availability states, although they don't have to be. But once a greeting a category is defined, and assign to a user, then they can record whatever they want. So while I could have my system use the automatic greeting, build it on the fly, Neil Butler is away from his desk, blah, blah, blah. I could also record my own away from the desk greeting that says, hi, evidently I'm not at my desk right now. I'm probably wandering around the building. Go ahead and leave me a message, and I should see it when I get back to my desktop. We can do it that way. So as many greetings as you want, they're all available. Now, the availability states are really good, really flexible, but you do get down to kind of a finite amount of control. If you think about meetings, for example, I have some meetings where they're my webinars that I'm giving, like this one. Well, I want those handled one way. I don't want that pop-up for these, right? I mean, I really don't need that. But when I'm sitting in a meeting somewhere else trying to stay awake, I'd be happy to have that pop-up. So when I create a meeting in Outlook, we have a little add-in, and you can see it here. I can assign an availability state to that particular meeting that overrides the normal one. So maybe I'm going to take that meeting, and it's a long meeting, and I'm listening in on it, and I'm going to take it while I'm driving out to a customer site. I mean, we've all had that happen. With this, I can turn it on so when I'm in that, how do I want that to be handled? Do I want to get that pop-up? Do I want calls to go straight to voicemail? I can define how each meeting is handled individually if I want. So now if we look at this, we started with something, pre all this technology, we had an automated attendant, and this is what our competition basically offers. Either say the name or dial the extension, and we'll transfer you to the desk. And maybe we'll have some call forwarding to send you to a second number. More typically, the competition will ring, 2 devices or more. Just not really very user-friendly or effective. But we're going to start with a schedule. We're then going to use automatic overrides based on the context to route those calls more efficiently and give those callers better information. And we'll also let that user override those for circumstances where the normal scheduling and overrides don't make sense. With this deployed in its simplest format for a user that has a mobile phone and a desktop phone and 1 or 2 locations, this is easy to use, great for the callers in terms of giving them information, and call completion will be greatly enhanced. And people who have this and have used it for a while, and we can give you references to talk to those people, they just love this. How important this is to you has to do with what your job is like. Once again, if you're one of those 8 to 5 at my desk, 1 phone people, you probably have already fallen asleep or dropped off the webinar. But if you're somebody who's mobile for a good part of your day, you work out of 2 offices, like a home office and a business office, this is the kind of technology that makes it easy for you to get more calls and not have to work at it. Let's see if I generated any questions.
There are a few questions coming in. Just a quick reminder, if you have a question to submit and you have not already sent it in, use the orange arrow in the upper corner of your screen and you'll expand and you should see the question box toward the bottom. Neil, first question. Is all of this customization on the CXE and not the PBX?
Yes, all this happens when the call gets to us. And that's why I said it'll work with the DID after the DID forwards to us. Now there is, unfortunately, some conflict here in the sense of some PBXs have a little bit of this call management as well. It's nothing like this. It's nowhere near as full-featured. But sometimes people say, oh, which one should I use? It's pretty easy to sit down kind of based on what the user's needs are and decide. There's never any reason why you can't use ours, whether you're using the one on the PBX or not.
Okay, next question. Can the user transfer a call back to his desk phone if he answers on his mobile?
Yeah, that's actually not so much a feature of call completion, but you notice one of the prompts said, say, accept call, reject call, acknowledge, or transfer. So we have that transfer capability. I could transfer a call right when it came in. I might hear it and say, oh, I know that Dave Farmer can handle this call. So I might just say, Dave Farmer, transfer to Dave Farmer, and then I can move on with what I'm doing, and Dave would get that call. Likewise, if the call came through our system, and and I'm talking to that customer, and they say, oh, now I need to talk to somebody else, then I can say, yeah, hold on a minute. I say one of the hot spotting words, like call express, hold call. Call held. What would you like to do? Transfer call to Dave Farmer. Transferring call. So yes, I can do it both, and I can also transfer it to another one of my devices for fixed mobile convergence. Keep in mind, for this to work, the call has to have come through us. Otherwise, we won't have any kind of control over it.
Okay. Next question. Can we make and define system-wide geolocations for each of our facilities?
No, unfortunately, they have to be built on the mobile phones themselves. And the original reasoning there had to do with a lot of pushback in our trial groups for people worried that their company was going to be watching them. So we've made it so the users have to create the locations themselves. It's pretty easy to do, though.
Okay, and let's see, I'm just doing a quick scroll. There was one question about getting the slides, and so just to reiterate that, the slides are available in the handouts area here on the webinar panel, or you can wait for the email that you will receive from us later today, which will have a link to download those, along with a link to the recording. So it looks like that actually wraps up the questions. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us, and certainly look for invites from us via email for future webinars that we'll be running. And with that, I'll go ahead and let Neil close us up as well.
Why, Ann, do you mean we're going to be doing more of these?
Surprising.
Yeah. The reason we keep doing more of these is because you people keep attending, which gives us hope that you're finding something useful. It'd be great to get feedback on what we could do better. Different subjects, make them shorter, make them longer, add music, you know, anything where you think we could do a better job at giving you this information. We would love to hear about it, and you can send us something at info@avst.com, and you can totally believe that somebody will get that and work on it. I'm not saying we'll do everything you ask for, because you never do that, but we will definitely take that feedback.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.